Hello, YouTube. It's the Grognard DM again. This is, I guess you would call it the special Coronation Edition. I'm staying up quite late because I plan to watch the coronation of King Charles III a live feed. And somebody might say, well, what does that have to do with gaming and everything? Well, it has a great deal to do, because especially if you're more of a storyteller type of DM and you have, for instance, some kind of a story where one of the player characters will become the ruler of a country and send a throne of some kind. Especially if you play Pathfinder with the kingdom building rules, very, very easy for it to happen. First edition AD&D had stronghold, very not a lot of rules. It was a lot mostly up to the DM to figure out how it would happen. But a fighter that achieved name level became a lord. If he cleared so much wilderness, people would come in and settle, and he was getting revenue from each inhabitant in that settlement. So you could play some kind of a thing, and there was even some modules written for the Forgotten Realms, where the player, it's intended that one of the player characters becomes the new Baron of Bloodstone, I think it was. So this is this is real world. This is how somebody who is becoming a ruler gets installed. And we don't see that very often. So yeah, it's grist for the mill. It's good stuff for me to be able to sit there and know the procedure so I can describe it. I did do a major plot arc where they saved a kingdom in decline, and one of the player characters wound up marrying the ruler's daughter, and so therefore became the heir, and so on and so forth. And it was, for that player, that moment where we played through his ascension to the throne was a major, major moment in role-playing for that player. And it would have cheapened it, I think, if I just simply said, okay, so they come in, they put the crown on your head, and you go off to the feast afterwards, and just glossed over all the pomp and ceremony and anointing with oil and all the other things with the symbolism and so on. It would have definitely cheated his experience. I happen to know a little bit about it, but when Charles's mom ascended the throne, I wasn't born yet. Maybe a Grognard DM, but I'm not that old. So, at any rate, I've never seen a real world coronation installation of a ruler in my life, so I'm going to take advantage of this so I can glean from it the ceremony and the symbolism so that I can incorporate that into my own running of a game. So, again, if you're a storyteller, everything is grist for your mill. And my experience has been the players really appreciate it. Now, I have had a few comments since the last video, some particular questions. Well, what about doing this for a magic item? I'm going to digest some of the questions. I can kind of go back to that. But they're good questions, and they really deserve a thought-out answer rather than something off the top of my head. So, continuing kind of what we've been doing over the past few weeks, discussing various games, I want to go over DC Heroes tonight, called Blood of Heroes now. Again, legalities, and the publisher then had to pull out, as part of the agreement, they had to pull out the DC logo and so on and so forth. And I think they also had to remove the major characters. Not that any DM that I know of has done that in their own game, but I am probably astonished at how much I enjoy playing DC Heroes. My first experience with playing in a superhero game similar to DC Heroes, where it's all point buy. You literally build your character. There's no random generation, no dice to help you. You have so many points, and if your idea of a hero is such that it's going to exceed those points, then you've got to take some drawbacks, quirks, limitations, whatever, to give you, as it were, negative points to offset. And my first one was Champions. I wound up designing a character that basically was a living nuclear bomb. The way he was designed, even though he was one of the beginning level characters and the main villain in the books was theoretically somebody you worked up to. You didn't just go out and start fighting him. I could have killed him flat out with the power. Now, I would have killed a whole bunch of innocent civilians and probably my own character, but there it is. It is possible to create a ridiculously powerful character if you know how to run numbers and crunch it. Which is one reason also I'm not that fond of the point buy type of game systems, because not everybody's good with math. I am running a bunch of people right now that are not exactly highly skilled in mathematics. They're very intelligent people, just their brains don't work that way, and that's fine. I'm not saying anything against that. But when you've got players that are having problems adding up a string of 5 or 6 modifiers to a d20 roll to give you the total of that d20 roll, yeah, they're not going to be able to say, okay, you've got 325 hero points to start creating your character, and this is how much everything's going to cost, and oh well, you've gone past that budget, so now you need to take some disadvantages or drawbacks or whatever. That's going to be, and truthfully, we've been playing a lot with some of the people in our group. Instead of having them create their own characters, they've been running canon characters. One guy runs Wonder Woman, another guy runs Batman. I was initially handed Green Lantern, but I found my character sheets and was like, yeah, this is fine, but let me play my characters. But it is a very fun game, and once you understand how everything works, you're still able to play it and not worry about the math. I've got a gadgeteer a la Batman. I really should do more with his gadgets, but the gadget system is... I labor under the difficulty of having played every edition of DC Heroes, and so that's the one rule they kept changing, how gadgets are created. And so sometimes I have to continually go back to the most current book to refresh my memory about how it works now, because sometimes my brain defaults back to how it worked in first edition or second edition. And they made it a little bit more complicated, a little bit more. It's a little hard to play under the system with, Batman always seems to have the right gadget for that exact moment, whereas if you're actually having to pay the hero point cost to build the gadgets and so on and so forth, it's a little bit harder to have a character like that. But other than that, if you're playing just the powered type of characters, Superman or Green Lantern or something like that, it is a very, very fun game, and it does provide a great deal of flexibility. We had one guy who played a character called the Comedian, and basically he had one power. It was matter manipulation, like Firestorm. Only he would use it to transpose it into jokes. He had a food fixation, so it was usually food stuff. Like the cameras, he would turn into tapioca pudding. And instead of just simply entangling or impeding the movement of people, he would turn the floor into lime jello or something like that. He was basically a practical jokester with his power. But the the basic approach to the as far as playing the game, it's 2d10. You're adding them together. It's not a percentile based game. Literally, you're generating numbers between 2 and 20. You do not want to roll 2 ones. That's an automatic failure. And if you roll doubles, otherwise, double twos on up to double tens, you roll and add. As long as you're rolling doubles, you're rolling and adding. So it is possible for even a beginning character to do something so incredibly heroic that you would think that, hey, it's Superman just showed up. He just went through about 5 or 6 walls with that one punch. And of course, the fun part about DC Heroes is the assumption is everybody's in bashing combat. So initially, especially, it was absurd. Superman would punch somebody that would go through 8 reinforced concrete walls, and the guy was still alive. He wasn't another superpowered individual with a lot of invulnerability or something like that to explain. So now you've got to be a little bit more cautious. Walls automatically enter killing combat. If you're going to play something like the Shadow, your gun is going to the default is it's going to enter killing combat unless you specifically have the gun loaded with rubber bullets or something that's supposed to be non-lethal. And then you would have to state your character was otherwise entering killing combat. Because, it's DC, heroes don't kill people. Even if they're villains, they don't kill. You would think, and there have been story arcs in the comic books written, like, why does Batman never just kill the Joker? Because he knows if he stays, so long as he's alive, he is going to get free, and as soon as he gets free, a lot of innocent people are going to die, because that's the way he rolls. So the greater good would be, seemingly, to eliminate him permanently. But it's the DC universe. The heroes don't kill unless they have absolutely no choice, or an accident happens. And then there's angst and remorse and so on and so forth. But there's ways to play a superpowered character or actually not even superpowered. You're playing somebody like the Batman who's a master martial artist. Okay, you're attacking multiple people at once, and the penalties, yes, they're significant, but the people you're attacking are just average Joes, common punks or thugs, mafia hitmen with no special powers. You're going to pretty much lay them all unconscious on the deck. One of the things that is great about it is it does allow for a very fast-paced combat. Combat's, unless I guess you want to throw in something where the bad guy is the ruler of a world, and to get to him, or ruler of a nation, and to get to him, you've got to get through his army, and there's thousands of people. Combats don't last long. They're very fast-paced. And, of course, if you're really into that genre, or into the attitude of comic book superhero, you're coming up with all the silly little quips that they find time to do in the middle of the combat in the comic books. So with a good DM who really understands the source material, you do feel like you get that immersion experience where you feel like you're living out a comic book. So it is a very good game. It's a very fun game, which I say this often. This is my commandment of a role-playing game. If it's a good game, thou shalt have fun. If you're not having fun, one of two things. It's not a good game to begin with, or it really is not your genre of game. Why do I say that? I really never got into H.P. Lovecraft. I know enough about what he wrote and the stories that he told and everything to know about the Cthulhu mythos, and there's a lot more than Cthulhu in that mythos. But it just isn't my cup of tea as a work of fiction. And so Call of Cthulhu and a lot of the other role-playing games where you can play people at Arkham University or Miskatonic or whatever, um, I just don't enjoy playing it because I'm playing a genre I don't care for. I know some people, well, my best friend, for instance, he doesn't really care for science fiction role-playing games. It's very light, like Star Wars or Star Trek, or something a little bit heavier. He's a fantasy guy. He loves swords and sorcery. So whenever talking about getting together to play, I am going to be brushing off D&D, Rollmaster, Hackmaster, something that's fantasy based because I know he'll enjoy that game. I'm a little bit broader in that I'll do an awful lot of things. My biggest area is I don't like limitations on a character's lifespan in play. For instance, I have enjoyed the times that I have played the White Wolf game, especially the live action role playing. What they had about 30 years ago was really top notch. I loved going to the very different cities and the shared universe and everything and playing that character. But in the long run, if you're going to play up to the type of character, and I don't care whether you're talking about the vampire, a werewolf, a magus, a changeling, or the other myriad approaches they have to playing in the world of horror, if you play to that type, the character has a limited lifespan because he eventually goes insane, becomes bestial, or something that makes him unplayable. And I'm not like that. I don't like games that have limited levels. I was very happy when 3rd edition came out with the epic level handbook so that play didn't stop at 20th level. Pathfinder came up with some basic rules for play beyond 20th, but they got sidetracked. Instead of doing their own version of the epic level handbook, they pulled out the Mythic Adventures. So theoretically speaking, it's still, that 1st edition was still 20 levels of play, and then you were done. So I just simply came up with my own rules when I'm running those games to go past 20th level. For D&D's birthday this coming January, it's 50 years that it's been out since it was published in 74. I'm coming up with a birthday party for it. And the whole basic premise, I'm writing a campaign or an adventure, a one-off adventure for 50th level characters. Oh my gosh, are you crazy? It's not as crazy as you might think. Plus, I know how to design monsters that would be challenges for those people. I already have, actually. Because back in the day, you had people that would come in from out of town. They just moved to town, and so they want to join your group. Well, what do you have? Oh, I have a 45th level ranger with 20 artifacts and blah, 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 blah. Okay. So I created a monster specifically to handle those characters and depower them. So I've already written monsters that can challenge high-level characters. I actually nearly killed one of my own high-level characters, my very first character. He's in the 50s himself. And I knew that my party would summon him when I was running some people will shudder, Queen of the Demon Web Pits. But they were having their encounter with Lolth, and they figured my character would wipe the floor. Well, Lolth is the demoness, queen, goddess of the spiders. So she summoned Ungalant from Tolkien. And kind of overpowered it. I nearly killed my own character. So it is very possible. Getting back to DC Heroes, that's the big thing is, as you play the game, you're getting hero points when you successfully finish an adventure. That's like your experience points, only like in Star Wars, the D6 version. You can use them during play to enhance character performance, or you can bank them and in between adventures improve the character, improve your energy blast from 10 APs to 11 APs or whatever, so the character's a little bit more potent. That doesn't sound like much, but the way DC Heroes is written, it's on an exponential scale. Your average human, just, lowest lane, whatever, has a 2 in all the 9 attributes. A 3 strength is twice as strong as a 2 strength. A 4 is twice as strong as a 3, and therefore 4 times as strong as a 2, and so on and so forth. So, it doesn't actually take much. You've got a character with attributes in the 7 to 9 range, and you're among the most potent in that attribute on the planet. You certainly are very significantly strong, because we're talking about Olympic level athletes at this point in terms of the physical aspects. You're talking about Einstein in terms of the mental aspects. So it is a very fast-paced game, as I've said before. They have benchmarks, so you get an idea of where your attribute, a given attribute, is in terms of lifting capacity, storage capacity, speed. So you do have little ways to measure in your own mind how in the real world this character would perform. The way you can design items to help with the characters, that's all in there. You've got powers and skills, obviously, but you can also play things. Even one of my characters, for instance, it's called the Minotaur because he kind of like Shazam. To become his hero persona, he has to say by the hand of Zeus, and well, Shazam gets 1 lightning bolt, I get 2. But I transform from being a normal human being into bull-headed, horn, toga, bipedal humanoid with a lot of strength and a lot of invulnerability. I didn't really have an acting skill. I could have just made it a simple charisma check. But they decided, just because of the appearance, as a joke on me, that the Minotaur would enter the world of professional wrestling. He went 1 match. Person came up, punched him, just about broke his hand, and the Minotaur just went, boom! Did I win? He didn't have any acting skill to sell it. He was the Undertaker before there was the Undertaker, for those that follow professional wrestling. Those that don't know, don't worry about it. Not that significant. I just played him as not having any real acting skill. So sometimes you get these things sprung on you as a joke, but it's a comic book game, so you roll with it. Sometimes you go into extremely silly situations. So for those that want to do a little bit of superhero role-playing, I would probably recommend DC Heroes or Blood of Heroes, called by what's called right now, over any of the others. I do not really have a lot of experience with Marvel superheroes, but from what I understand, it's much the same mechanic. It's just now you're in the Marvel universe, so it's got a lot of that atmospheric flavor versus the DC. But I, obviously I played Champions. I also did the Palladium version, Heroes Unlimited, and that was okay. But when I play DC Heroes, I feel like I'm actually playing a superhero, even if he's a non-powered ripoff of the Batman, like one of my characters is. He's got much different flavor and everything. I will say I had a collapsible hand crossbow before DC came out with the Huntress, so I think they ripped that off from me personally. But so it's something. It's a definite different flavor when you're playing role-playing, a superhero role-playing game, than when you're playing fantasy like Dungeons and Dragons. You always have some resource management. You can only cast so many spells per day, whether they're fueled by power points, spell points, or whatever, or just standard D&D preparation slots. And then you're done. There's no such limitation in a superhero role-playing game. If you've got energy blast and you can project a sonic scream like Black Canary can, you can do that every round if you want to. You can do it 50 times in one day if you want to. It really doesn't matter. You've got the skill at so many action points of power, and there it is. It doesn't diminish, doesn't waver, it doesn't deplete. You can place those limitations if you want to. Like if you're playing a Green Lantern or one of the ones that use a power ring, it's good for 24 hours. You got to recharge it. So there are limitations that you can impose inside the game for your character. But if you want to have a character that's got absolutely no limitations whatsoever, just keep playing it. But resource management is not a part of the strategy behind playing that game. So if you don't like dealing with resource management, superhero role-playing games are a great one, and I would highly recommend the DC universe for this, Blood of Heroes. And if you like Marvel more, then probably, if, as I've been told, they're pretty much the same game, then obviously Marvel Superheroes, or whatever the current iteration of it's called. So there's superhero role-playing games for you guys. I hope I didn't drone on too long, and we'll see you next week. Until then, may all your hits be crits.